Conservation Director here at the Historical Museum, and today I have both my dogs here, and we're going to do a tour of our Shay-type locomotive here. We'll walk around both sides, and then I'll take you on a little tour inside as well.
Our engine number 7 was built in 1923 by the Bingham-Willamette Company of Portland, Oregon. It was first used by the Western Lumber Company of Milltown, Montana, and was later acquired by the Anaconda Copper Mining Company, and it even spent some time in Arlee and as far away as Plains, but it was always in western Montana. Our engine is a Willamette Shay-type engine. The Shay locomotive was the most widely used geared steam locomotive for its time. The locomotives were built to the patents of Ephraim Shay, a schoolteacher turned inventor from Michigan. In the 1860s, he became a logger and wished to create a better way to move logs to the mill than on winter snow sleds. When key patents on the Shay locomotive expired, it was possible for other manufacturers to produce Shay-like engines, though many improvements were made from the original Shay locomotive. Many of the Willamette engines burned oil rather than wood, even though most worked for logging companies in which wood would be abundant. Oil burners produced fewer sparks and were less likely to ignite a forest fire than coal or wood-fired locomotives. Engine number 7 was one of the only coal-fired Willamette locomotives to be created. Eventually, engine number 7 retired from Champion International in 1948 but was brought back into service for the movie Timberjack. Engine number 7 is featured in several railroad and logging scenes. After the movie, the engine was parked in Bonner across from the Champion Mill in a fenced park. In 1988, Champion officials made the decision to donate engine number 7 to the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula. Officers from Montana Rail Link and Western Transport Crane and Rigging agreed to move the locomotive to its current site as part of the Forestry Interpretive Area a year later, in 1989.
Okay, so Sif is new to trains, as she's pretty new to the fort, so I'm going to just point out some basics. Some of you guys might know this already, but our Shay-type locomotive is a steam locomotive, and one of the ways you can tell that is because of the balloon stack up there. So when you fire coal in a train, it might let loose little embers. Inside that balloon stack, there's several layers of screen that keeps the embers from going out and setting the forest on fire. A little further down the body of the train, where you see the gray tarp, it's in the middle of our restoration project, but underneath there are these cool steam cylinders that pump up and down, and then they use a drive shaft to turn the wheels. So if you look at the wheels of the train, it might look a little bit different from the locomotives you might think of if you were thinking about the one that's down by the X's. That's because this one was built to go up steep grades, so it didn't go very fast, but it went up steep grades and carried heavy loads like the logs that are back there on our steam train. We'll head inside in just a moment, and then I will tell you more about the jobs inside the locomotive and a little bit more about how it runs. All right.
This diagram isn't of our number 7. You can see the smokestack's a little bit different on there, but there are a lot of similarities. You can see the 3 cylinders that move the motor there. The 3 cylinders would turn the crankshaft, which would then turn the drive shaft, which would move the axles, which would move the train.
So we're inside the Shay-type locomotive now. I was just showing Sif here the different jobs that you would have if you were running this engine. So one person would be the engineer, who would be seated here, and so they're in charge of some of these controls here. And then the other person would be called the fireman. The fireman would need to shovel the coal that would have been in this space back here into the boiler to keep it running. The engineer would be in charge of all kinds of different things. Obviously there's no steering wheel here because we are running on a track, but we have 2 different sets of brakes here, one for the locomotive itself and the other for the cars behind us. And then we have this that would show us, or that would have us move forward, neutral, or backwards. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff here that is beyond my expertise, but involves keeping the steam engine running well. It was kind of like driving a big bomb. If you didn't have enough water in here, you could actually melt the inside of the boiler and it would explode. So obviously that would be something that we wouldn't want to happen. So those are the basics of the inside of the locomotive. And I'll show you some diagrams when I get a chance to bring out the pictures.
Here's a very simple explanation of how steam power works. You'll see our coal in our boiler there that heats up the water, that creates steam, and that pressure moves down to the piston, and then the piston moves the crankshaft, which eventually moves the wheels. You remember from looking at our train, though, that our pistons are vertical, so it's a little bit different, but you get the idea.
So Reykur just reminded me of something that I forgot to point out on this side of the train. So Sif, this area back here is where, you're not looking in the right spot, is where the coal would have been kept. When you were inside, you may have noticed that there's a big black wooden wall, but when the locomotive was in use, the coal kind of spilled over into the compartment there. And then behind the coal compartment is another exceptionally important part of the train. This part is where we keep the water. And so that combination of water and coal and heat and pressure was what made this engine go. So these are very important.
Engine number 7 served Montana well during its operation, never working more than 80 miles from the Missoula Valley. Its whistle signaled prosperity and stability for those earning their livelihoods in the woods, valleys, and mountains. Now, with the help of Larry Ingold and a crew of enthusiastic volunteers, we're in the process of restoring our Willamette. When work resumes, we'll be sure to record another video with Larry that goes into more detail about the technical specifics of the train. In the meantime, I got the chance to chat with Larry about how the restoration progress is going and what makes our Willamette special. Larry mentioned that this train was a workhorse. It wouldn't have been a comfy ride. It was rough and tumble. It was built to go slow, handle rough terrain, tight turns, rough track, and haul heavy logs for both the Western Lumber Company and later the lumber division of the Anaconda Mining Company. So in this way, it's unique because it's one of the few that still remain, and it also represents a big part of Western Montana's history. If you'd like more information about how to help support the restoration of our Willamette locomotive, you can check out the Save the Train page on our website, or give me an email or a Facebook post, and I'll be happy to point you in the right direction.